Hello, and welcome to another episode of Daily Music History.
I'm Abraham.
And I'm Wes, and today we're talking about.
Jimi Hendrix's Electric Ladyland.
That's right. And on today's date, November the 16th, in 1968, Electric Ladyland hit number one. It was in the U.S. It was the only U.S. number one for Jimi Hendrix. As well known as he is and as respected as he is, that is the only number one that he had. Now, the recording sessions for this album were a bit interesting, and it resulted in the loss of his manager. Now, not loss in the sense of death, but the individual, Jimmy's manager, Chaz Chandler, quit in the middle of the sessions as a result of the atmosphere in the studio during the session. So what I mean is, he had a combination of two major things that were really making him irritated. And he became more and more irritated as time went on. Number one was what bass player Noel Redding described as a party scene in the session. So Hendrix would show up to the studio and he'd have 8 or 9 people with him who were there to watch him do the recording. Now, what do you think would happen if you show up to work, whatever your job is, you show up hauling 8 or 9 of your friends with you?
They're going to start a conversation and get you distracted.
Well, at the very least, yeah.
But a party will go on.
It's going to be a major problem. And working in a recording studio is not exactly the most exciting thing in the world. It's kind of exciting to be there and working and everything, but to sit and watch it for hours on end, I don't think would be too exciting of a thing to do. But that's what was going on. Now, Chaz Chandler, the manager, he said when Hendrix would actually get prepared to do the recording and the music would actually start, Hendrix was viewing it too much like a performance for the crowd who was in the studio, not for the recording machines, which is what he should have been focusing on, at least in Chandler's opinion. Now, Noel Redding had a band of his own at this time, and he was the bass player for the Experience, and he took this opportunity to excuse himself from the party atmosphere. Now, as a result, then, Hendrix didn't have a bass player. So what did he do? Do you know?
Mm-mm.
He played it himself. He played the bass, at least for most of the songs, played the bass himself. Now, Redding said that when he left the sessions, he walked out thinking, I don't care if I ever see Hendrix again. That's how angry this kind of stuff made him. And but it wasn't just the party atmosphere. He said that Hendrix was very much a perfectionist. And they had on the song Gypsy Eyes, they had done around 50 takes for it, which is just a lot of takes. And so Redding, when he walked out of the studio, he said, I don't care if I ever go back. That's just too much for him. Now, he did go back and ended up recording vocals on a song that he had written that was recorded for the album. But at the time when he walked out, he was really walking out. Now, the album itself is a lot of the songs, at least now, have received play on the radio. 2 songs in particular really stand out to me on the album. One is Voodoo Child's Slight Return, which is the final song on the album, but it is just a monstrous, 6, 7, 8 minute long song, which is just incredible, and was later recorded by Stevie Ray Vaughan as well, who also did a fantastic job on it and gave new life to the song. As far as listeners of Stevie Ray may not have, well, he probably did, heard Jimi Hendrix's version, but to hear them side by side is pretty impressive. They both can definitely do justice to the song on the guitar. And then, of course, is the classic All Along the Watchtower. All Along the Watchtower was originally written by Bob Dylan, and Hendrix took the song and kind of changed, well, not kind of changed it, he really changed it. He kind of made the song his own. And Dylan is reported to have said that he preferred Jimi Hendrix's version to his own. And apparently, in concert, Bob Dylan tends to play it up a lot more like Hendrix's version rather than his original version. No, I think that's about as big a compliment as I can imagine paying somebody. Where you,
Where
I mean,
you, where you like it more than yours.
yeah, especially someone of the quality of work that Bob Dylan's put out. And this guy won the Nobel Prize for Literature a few years ago. He's not a know nothing when it comes to writing, and for someone of that caliber to say that he prefers your version of his song to his own version of his song, that's pretty impressive.
He's still alive?
Dylan is still alive, yeah. Well, as of today, he's still alive. Yeah, so the critical response when this album was released, it was pretty lukewarm. A lot of critics didn't care for it. A lot of critics thought, bits and pieces are okay, and some of it's terrible. It was a double album. That's one thing. So you bought the record, and there were two actual records in there. So you have four sides of music instead of two. So a lot of people thought that was overkill, a little bit self-indulgent. But then, over time, as Hendrix's peers and then later musicians really started to absorb what was recorded, then you start to see some of the critical response changing and taking it. I was going to say a lot more seriously, but I don't think that's exactly what I want to say. Taking it, understanding it in a different light than the contemporary critics, or the critics contemporary with Hendrix. So what I mean is, that's a kind of a roundabout way of saying that these days critics tend to view the album in a much more favorable light than they did 50 years ago. So, for instance, Rolling Stone magazine said it was kind of disconnected. Some of the parts are kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it said it just doesn't flow right. They said you've got a particular sort of energy that's kind of existent in all of the songs, kind of links the songs together in that way, but that as a whole, as a double album, as one piece, doesn't really work. Some pieces are there that shouldn't be there. Cut that out and make it a lot better. These days, though, Rolling Stone and a lot of other critics are pretty high on it for good reason. There's a mode of rock music that it focuses heavily on soloing and a lot of interesting noises and progressions and such, called psychedelic rock, and this is basically the groundwork for psychedelic rock right here. It is certainly the definitive psychedelic album, and it kind of gave birth to the whole thing. Now, I'm sure if you go back in time and you can look at Hendrix's contemporaries, you could see other people working in this particular field as well. But I don't think any of them accomplished quite what Hendrix did with Electric Ladyland. In fact, when you remember My Bloody Valentine's Loveless, it was called, I read a review of it once about 20 years ago, and they called it the Electric Ladyland of shoegaze music. We'll get into shoegaze at a later date. But they used that's the sort of sea change that we're talking about, where rock music doesn't necessarily change, but there's been a whole new limb added onto the rock music family tree, shall we say. Now, another critic says, and I forgot to write his name down, he said that this is arguably the greatest album ever recorded because of the experimentation, the concept behind it, the fact that it's a double album, the incredible musicianship that's on display. That's definitely a change from 52 years ago when this was first released. And I think most people today, listeners and critics, consider it Hendrix's finest moment. This is the masterpiece of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. What would you like to say about it, bud?
I think it sounds good.
Excellent. Yeah, I think all along the Watchtower, I think in particular, there's a particular sound to that individual song's recording that is just, I don't know. There's something dark and brooding and kind of doom laden to me. But what do I know? I just talk about it. All right, are there any questions you have about it? Maybe I could answer something.
No?
All right. All right. Well, if that's the case, I think we're done for now.
If you like what we're hearing, hit that subscribe button and go listen to some music.
Yeah, this would be a good day to listen to Electric Ladyland, and remember, it hit #1 today.